So before we started recording, Josiah, you said maybe we shouldn't talk about the live stream.
Right. So I guess this is a hard yes.
Well, you know, we just did an intro for Exclusi that was released a few days ago, and I literally forgot to record, which I think is a good sign that I'm still experiencing a bit of a hangover from the 1 year anniversary. And I wanted to talk about it, and then maybe based on your feedback, I thought I would not touch it. And then literally not hitting record was a sign that I perhaps needed to address it.
Well, and I just said to you earlier that I feel like I'm like a producer on a radio show now, where I'm like, oh, we need to record this quick hit for the exclusive. Like, I don't know. I don't really know what a producer does, but I feel like one.
Yeah, we're basically WKRP in Cincinnati now. I am Dr. Johnny Fever, the only character whose name I remember from that show, and you are presumably a producer on that show.
I'm all the gingers with fitted hats and stretched earlobes from Indie 88. I'm all of them. There's 15 of us, and they're all me.
You know, Indie 88 sponsors quite literally like you taking a shit in the summer in the city of Toronto. Like, you cannot walk past like the most piddly fucking flea market without 8 Indie 88 interns coming out and high-fiving you and getting you to play Plinko for a water bottle. And for a while, I was taking photos of myself kind of grimacing in front of it, just being like, you know, they follow me everywhere. But I actually stopped because it was just like too much effort to document just their endlessly pervasive presence in my life.
So they really are this like dystopian entity. It's not just this one instance of them stealing from us and stomping all over us is just part of a larger picture of dystopia.
Yeah, exactly. Indie 88 is Big Brother watching me everywhere I go. And then, of course, this podcast is basically the 5 minutes hate, 10 minutes hate. Ashley, how much hate do they do in 1984? How much hate? How long?
I would say we're more like the 180-minute hate or something right at this point. Because it really does feel like, I mean, we're recording this quite a bit before the episode comes out. I feel like we've talked so much lately.
Yeah, like I have joked, you have joked about us sort of spending more time with each other than our wives, but I think the first date episode being sort of as beefy as it was, and then of course we did a live stream to celebrate our 1 year anniversary on Friday on Twitch, which like was legitimately a hilarious and kind of incredible experience.
Which also required an additional 1 hour of you and I on
right.
Skype.
We spent time prepping for that, and then when we stopped broadcasting, we kind of just hung out and chatted for like another
two full rooms of people just shooting the shit.
Yeah.
So I guess for those who missed it, I think there was some sort of button we were supposed to press on Twitch to archive it that we didn't press.
I'm glad we didn't.
Me too. You guys get enough out of us. That was for the true heads only.
I don't know. There's a lot of people out there just like fiending for more Blink 155 content.
Which is why you should go to patreon.com /Blink 155.
But it was the whole sort of like making a big deal out of doing this podcast for 1 year ended up being sort of incredible because as a result of you and I kind of making a big deal about it, other people kind of got in on it, and there were so many like really, what kind of bevy's that?
President's Choice Lemon.
Oh, I got President's Choice Lime. So,
well, we just go together like lemon and lime.
As all of the reviews for our podcast say on iTunes, please rate and review and use that anecdote.
That. Someone should please comment that. We'll give you a prize if you do that.
You will absolutely get a prize. But it ended up being kind of this hilarious and sort of incredible experience of the people that have been invested in the podcast for the last year. Writing some very actually quite sincere and sweet things on Twitter, and then ultimately joining in this multi-hour sort of live stream experience. The highlight for me personally was when friend of the pod, Claire Richardson, came over and just turned it into a makeup tutorial. And so she was doing up her makeup to look like a gray, I guess in homage to Tom's alien fixation. And I just thought, like, we're doing something important here. Makeup tutorials on Twitch that are so very lightly Blink-182 themed.
There was some great or when we were just listening to our own first episode.
Yeah,
Twitch.
That was really good.
There was a lot of great stuff that happened, but we spent we literally did spend, I would say, 90 minutes setting up, just hanging out on chat. We switched computers at one point because, not to brag, but bit of a better rig over in the Hughes household.
Well, you are gamers, so
yeah, it's not a gamer computer though, which is my point. We do just have a decent iMac that Sarah uses to edit films.
Wow, brag much.
But that's the thing. On my computer, I was like, "Oh, this looks okay. Everything's working fine." And then I looked at people's videos of the stream, and it looked like absolute garbage.
It's terrible.
So I don't know if we'll ever do this again. I feel like we need someone to teach us how to how do you do encoding or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. It was we set it up we got to the encoding part, I would say 30 minutes before it started, when you were like, I still need to have a shower and do all this shit. And so we're like, okay, I'm sure it'll be fine. And then everyone basically got 1 frame per second.
Yeah.
I would say it's a nice slideshow with audio.
I think every person watching the stream got their own frame, and that's sort of how they were distributed.
That's what it was intended as.
And I was quite happy. But again, to be honest, it's something I would love to do again. Maybe we can figure out how to do it. But despite all those technical hiccups, we had people watching from other parts of the world.
Wodonga.
From Wodonga and from London, and that's a trip.
Wodonga.
Wodonga is truly my favorite place. I wonder what it was like in Wodonga on April 18th.
That's not the title of the song.
Well, I don't know. How do you want me to say for 2011?
It's just weird because, people say that this song is signed off by who wrote it. But I was thinking about that, and it's who wrote this song? It doesn't make Mom He Long? Mravis Harker?
It's a
Matt
Krainer. Oh, it's Mjon Heldman.
Yeah, no, I think the MH stands for
Most High.
Yeah.
because as we all know, always about finding the sort of Christian meaning, and I think we did. Mm-hmm. So we're good. The pod's done now.
We're done, so we can take a long break, make up for last week.
Yeah, talk to our wives. I didn't realize that this was signed off by Mjot Hayner himself until I think you started telling me about it a week ago.
Yeah, I think I just mentioned the title of the song, but I don't remember telling you any details about
right,
it.
Okay.
I'm doing the opposite of yes-anding, where I'm just nah.
I'm this is what happens when I'm now understanding the importance of yes-and, because you're just swimming in shit.
No, that definitely didn't happen, but I'll let you take this from here.
Thanks. Thanks, man.
You piece of shit.
So I had not... I feel like I never heard this song. When I put this song on half an hour ago, I was like, is this even on Neighborhoods? Because I clearly fall off so fucking hard on this record that this is a glimmer of a memory for me.
Right.
Do you feel a way about this song? Or did you feel a way about this song before coming in to record this very professional episode of Blink-155?
Well, I didn't really... I don't remember it from the first time I listened to Neighborhoods because I think I only made it 4 songs in and then didn't touch it for many years. But then since I've revisited, I do remember this one. Not really. I remember this one coming on and being oh, it almost sounds like a pop punk song. That's okay. But then now I think I kind of like it. I know this is a song that low key people are it's a secret. It's one of Mark's best songs ever and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if I agree with that, but I do think it has some merits.
Yeah, I kind of had the same experience listening back to it, again, half an hour ago, where I was like, what? And then I sort of came to this realization that the song is actually, really good. This is a really good song. But it's just buried in, a truly shit half of a shit record.
Well, especially because he goes from this into Love is Dangerous and Fighting the Gravity, which are like two of the worst songs I've ever heard in my fucking life.
Yeah. So I think it was just like very easy to put this song on or put this record on when it came out, sort of have this song get lost in a true sea of shit and then never kind of come back to the record. But if you did, maybe come back to like Up All Night or, you know, Snake Charmer or what have you.
Yeah. I don't think I like Snake Charmer either, but yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I think the first 8 songs or so are where you're like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then by Kaleidoscope onward, you're like, I'm very tired and old, and I should be doing something better with my time.
Yeah, that's it. The song is a way of making you feel very tired and very old.
So, do you know what Marble Hornets is? Have you heard of the Marble Hornets?
I have not, Josiah.
I think it's like, I don't know, it seemed like some shit that you might know from like This Exists or whatever. It's a, it's a YouTube show, and it seems to be... Oh, it was inspired by Slender Man. So it was posted in 2009, and then it continued through. But it's a web series about Slender Man, and this is a Reddit comment that I saw earlier today, which just goes to show like how much people want to ascribe meaning to things that are very clearly just someone putting a date and initials.
Oh my God. So Marble Hornets had the season finale on 4/18/2010. Correlation? Oh my God.
I mean, yeah, obviously. 1 year, because it's about the 1 year anniversary of Marble Hornets having a season finale.
That could be the only possible thing that MH could stand for there.
Yeah, because it's not Mommy Long.
Mommy Long. Yeah, the song title is also throws me a little bit in terms of it potentially being like a throwaway song, because I feel like returning to this record, that looks like the title of like a filler track that would be like, and even in my darkest hours, you will see me sailing across the seas, you know? And then into Love is Dangerous.
To me, it reminds me of like how they love to name things after like just benign little factoids that they think are like 6'8", for example, or
right.
Other than the significance of it to our very own existence, but the fact that there's a Plus 44 song called 155 just because that's the tempo of the song,
right?
You know, it's like it's not that interesting. There are, but what happened with this song was, so he had just saved it on his computer as MH418-2011, the classic like, you know, final 2 of your saved drafts or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, he just gave it like the shitty name like that. And then he wanted to change the name to Hold On, which is not a great name either, but better, I think.
I might at least like remember what the song was. Like, not to be like a literal pop guy, but it's very hard to recall that that's what this song is.
I took all of my notes by Googling MH41811, and I was like, wow, there's not that many notes. And then I realized it was 2011, not 11, so I had to do it all over again.
Right.
Because I am, by contract, have to be excruciatingly thorough with my note-taking.
Of course.
But yeah, so he wanted to call it Hold On, and then Tom DeLonge, no, what did I say? Mom He Long.
Yeah.
He came in and was like, yo, hold up. You should keep that name because it looks like a fucking virus or something. That's what he said. He said it looked like a virus, so they should keep the name.
That's some very Mom Halong type thinking for sure.
Yeah. So that's why it's called that. And that also is funny because it kind of, the narrative of the album is that they were in separate studios, and people think that Tom didn't even play guitar on this song at all, which I think actually kind of holds up when you listen to it. It doesn't sound very Blink.
Well, it sounds like a Plus 44 song. Like, this sounds like the second best Plus 44 song.
Yeah,
to me.
well, actually, this inspired me to listen to the Plus 44 album today, and I gotta say, it fucks.
Does it?
Yeah, it's good. I think it's because, like, there's so much wretched California material right now. But B, I'm like really into major label alternative music from the 2000s lately, and I never stop talking about Zwan. But I feel like this is kind of in that same sweet spot where it's just like very shiny. It's a big shiny tunes kind of vibe. I don't know. There's like, it's just like pretty mid tempo, sounds very huge, and there's some pretty cool guitar stuff on there. So yeah, I'm into the album. I've never really made it all the way through till today, but it's good. But yeah, this song reminds me of that too. The lead guitar in it also almost has this sort of like Paisley C86 indie pop sort of picking that I'm all about. So I don't know. It's pretty sick, but it's just interesting that Tom DeLonge, if they were in separate rooms the whole time, separate cities, that he would still be like, yo, the song title looks like a virus. Like, I don't know. That's at least some input. He did something.
I mean, that's there's like a clever rhyme scheme for pop stars getting co-writing credits. It's like change a word, get a third. So when you see a pop song that's like co-written by, Adam Levine or whatever, and you're like, Adam Levine definitely walked in and was like, what if instead of like bar, we say car? And they're like, great, cool. And now you're making, you get 1/3 of the songwriting on this, right?
Well, that sounds like then Tom was sort of stepping back from that and saying, I'm not going to add anything to this. It's already perfect. Let's keep the .rtf on the name too. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. This is like absolutely the kind of thing that you think is clever when you are younger, I think, right? Where you're like, oh, there's some significance in like, you see grace everywhere. And then eventually you grow old and you realize that grace is a lie, but you kind of feel that your actions and perceived serendipity has more meaning than it actually does, right?
Yeah, well, even on the pod, we can always be like, oh my God, there's ska everywhere. And there is, and it is ska season, and it is a spiritual thing that's happening right now. But I'm just saying we can see that, and it's true.
Right. So I think we're sort of making the same point, but just to extrapolate further. So I associate all of that with generally like a sort of younger, dumber mentality. When you're a little more myopic in your worldview and perhaps just haven't seen the true horrors that the society has in store for you, and realize that like nothing matters and there's no signs that mean anything to you at all. But being in a band, being in like a pop punk band until you're in your 40s and your 50s, or hosting a podcast about people who are in a pop punk band until they're in their 40s.
Until you're in your 40s or your 50s.
Your 40s or 50s. Is, a sort of cartoon version of a protracted adolescence. And so it would make sense that, part of that adolescent mindset would be continuing to sort of experience that sense of quiet wonder at things like MH418 2011 or ska season.
Well, it's, what else it makes me think of is like kind of like when you realize that like anyone who is above you, whether it's like, you're like boss or someone above you at work or somebody above you, like, I don't know, in some sort of community club, just the people that you see in positions of authority in your life, when you realize that they're all incredibly fucking stupid and dumb as shit and have no good ideas at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Like all that Tom had to do was become the boss of this band to the point where he could say, yo, keep that piece of shit title. It's like a virus. Let's keep it like that. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a good idea. The boss said that, so let's do it. Like there's just no bar for having to have any goodness of your ideas.
It's true. You just need to like act a certain way. And I mean, ultimately power comes from those below you. And so it is up to us as the proletariat to say no more, to cancel our Amazon Prime memberships, which I saw you did, and which
I did.
I also did.
It's paid for till November, so I might order a few more batteries.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mostly order batteries and like just really sad things because I don't want to walk to the faraway store.
The faraway store sounds like a location in the new season of Twin Peaks.
It's like I'm talking like 2 blocks instead of the store that's in my building.
Your building has a store?
Well, it's like literally across the street. Like I could probably go to the store in my underwear and come back and not feel that uncomfortable about it.
That's so
it's
sick.
So close.
When you need to like get some new, I guess not LaCroix, now that you've also had to say no to LaCroix.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on whether or not I've been sipping LaCroix. Let's just move along.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. And sorry, were you still making a point about like the magic of it all? Because I do feel like we have created that a lot on here where we're like, oh my God, it's all connected. All these people have said fuck in their videos. It's magic.
Yeah.
It's fuck season.
Yeah, it's true. That's the next one. We've created a lot of magic. We've been like baseball and pop punk and Star Wars.
There is a new one that I forgot to mention that I will mention when we get to the lyrics.
Well,
is it time already?
I feel like we're there.
No, actually, it's not yet because I wanted to just roast this general. And again, keep in mind that I said I like this song, so before you get all pissy about it, you whiny listeners. But I do want to roast this song appreciation thread on Reddit because it's just very idiotic. And specifically, I want to go to the very bottom. And this was 1 year ago. This person said, "This song changed my life. Whenever I end up getting a Blink tattoo, it'll be based on this song." That's cool. Any ideas what the tattoo will be? It's so literal. It's so literal that I can't handle it. Maybe it is better to talk about the lyrics. So the lyrics, we'll come back to the tattoo. Let's talk about what the tattoo is after we talk about the lyrics.
Exciting.
That's a good setup.
That was great, man. You really are becoming a great producer.
Again, it's because what we've established even about Tom naming the song, you just have to be the loudest one who has some control. And then you're like, oh, that guy is smart.
Wow.
But you just have to be obnoxious and confident.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, the main thing I wanted to say that's a pop punk thing that we haven't really talked about yet is the usage of definitely the word radio, but also kill the radio and radio silence. All three are sort of squished together in the first lyrics of this song, and I think that is extremely pop punk.
Oh yeah.
And no one has listened to the radio in like 50 years, and yet still there will always be a new pop punk song that's like, and we're listening to the radio.
I can't remember if we got this far in the short music for short people exclusive because it was like the first date episode.
That was another dark
a
blackout.
Long and terrible day. But the Ataris had a song, "The Radio Still Sucks," on that compilation that subsequently ended up on, I guess, End Is Forever. And I had a T-shirt. I had an Ataris T-shirt that said "The Radio Still Sucks" on it. And absolutely, at the time that I bought that shirt, up until the point that I eventually folded it and put it away because it was a small and I haven't been a small in 10 years, I had not listened to the radio, like, at all. Now it feels like now it's a righteous cause. Like now the radio is a legitimate villain in my life, but up until then, not the case.
Yeah, but it's regardless of whether it's half the time they're saying the radio sucks, the other half the time they're saying like, I'm looking at a cute girl, music on the radio, cruising down the strip. Like, yeah, it's like,
what was Revolution Radio like? The Green Day record? I don't think I ever listened to it.
Oh yeah, it was pretty bad. And the good thing about that one that I loved was that, like, because the smart thing that everyone's doing right now is just leaning into the nostalgia aspect of pop punk. That's why everyone is like on tour, releasing albums. MXPX is like becoming millionaires off Kickstarter. Everyone's leading into it. But Billy Joe Armstrong, bless his heart, he leading up to the release of that on Twitter, he wrote like, my objective next year is to kill the word pop punk forever. No one will ever say the word pop punk ever again. Like, big mistake, bud.
It. Did you see that thing where I think it was the Washington Post was writing about American Idiot and quoted the Clickhole article where Billy Joel Armstrong was finally able to admit that the American Idiot was in fact George W. Bush?
Yeah, I did read that. And then I had a big debate with someone about whether or not we should post a story about it. Whether or not it was okay to make fun of someone else's mistake.
Right. Did you post it?
No, I obviously wanted to, and then someone didn't want to. Because someone thought that someone would be cruel to us when we made a mistake one day. Oh. And also, this person may or may not have known what Clickhole was.
The way you kept saying someone, like, really made it sound like you were talking about me. Like, someone wouldn't let me post about it. I was like, Josiah, it wasn't me. I do not work with you at Exclaim.
It wasn't me. Yeah, you do. Wait, who am I talking to all day?
Right. Yes, and...
So, yeah, I don't know. Like, this fucking radio silence thing is like... It's very, and I guess that is my complaint about the song. Even the chord progression, it doesn't sound like Blink-182. It kind of sounds like, again, what my idea of Jawbreaker is, even though I've never really listened to them too much.
Right.
But then saying this radio silence thing, I'm like, damn, this is like some defend pop punk shit.
Yeah, what? Like, I would love to figure out maybe over the next year of this podcast why the radio is such a like foundational lyrical cliche in pop punk.
It sounds pretty the maybe we should talk to a linguistics person because it does have a lot of the like nasal, as you say it, radio.
Yeah. And it's so loaded. I mean, you talk about the kind of nostalgia sort of tour of our entire lives, and it's a simple word imbued with a tremendous amount of meaning, and that it probably makes it sort of like easily weaponizable when you don't necessarily have like tremendous lyrical acumen. Although, I mean, we've talked about this. I think Mark, and this is like not a bad Mark lyric song.
Yeah, I mean, this is metaphor Mark in full swing.
Yeah.
I meant to make note of this and do a comparison, but I think a lot of these lyrics are kind of recycled in Los Angeles because isn't there even helicopter noises in there?
Yeah, are there helicopter noises?
Maybe not. No, just in my head.
Yeah.
He sings about helicopters, right? I don't know. Fuck that song.
He does. He sings about helicopters in both songs. I think like there's definitely an attempt to probably like produce some kind of effect the way between the drums and like the guitar that is helicopter-esque. And so in that sense, you know, John Feldman really did his job.
But I do think here Mark is like trying to show us that he reads books and it doesn't necessarily work for, and again, I really do like this song, but it doesn't necessarily work for a chorus. Like you don't open a chorus of a pop punk song with nothing takes root in this barren soil. Like, is this a worship song?
Yeah, man. Most High. I agree, and it's funny. Like I listened to the song a couple times, and now I'm looking at that phrase, and I can't tell you how he sings it. Like it's such a unnecessarily complex opening chorus thought.
Yeah, it's like crazy.
Like it's really not a hook.
No, but the main hook that, and this is, people do hate this line. I don't necessarily hate it, but the main hook that people remember is slow down and stop living in the shadow of a helicopter.
I kind of like it, man.
Well, here's the thing about it. Here's the thing. A lot of people are like, again, this is like the title. A lot of people are like, oh, it's like a helicopter parent. You know, like a helicopter parent. The kind that hovers over their kids and is overprotective. So he's saying, stop living in the shadow. Break free from your overprotective parents that are coddling you.
So this is like a punk rock fuck parents song is the interpretation?
That's the interpretation that people have chosen. Now here's Mark explaining why it's about helicopters.
One day when I was driving home from the studio, I was at a stoplight and a helicopter flew over me and the shadow just happened to cross right in front of my car. And for some reason, I started thinking about all the people in the world that live with helicopters flying over them all the time. People in war-torn countries, people in poor areas, people where circling helicopters is a way of life. And so I kind of wrote this song around that idea.
What?
Incredibly literal.
It's literal.
Yeah, but not only is it literal, but what he's basically let's just break down. Let's just break down the lyric quickly. So, let's say you live in a war-torn country, or let's say you live in a poverty-stricken community because your lot in life, you weren't born with the 10 miles ahead of privilege that some of us have. So you're stuck living in a war-torn country or a community that's ravaged by crime and pain and agony and also constant surveillance. And so seeing helicopters is a daily part of your existence, and it's just become normal to live that life where you're just ravaged by the true fear that comes with that and just the feeling that you're constantly, a war could break out at any moment. So that's your everyday life. That's your normal. And basically what Mark is saying is stop doing that. Just don't live there anymore. Just move to LA like the rest of us, or just move, just don't live there.
Well, yeah, or you can't live in LA because LA is, as we know, day in, day out, the searchlights from the helicopters are shining down.
But I just love that if he was running a political campaign on this position, he would just be like, Hey, poor people,
Just don't.
stop it.
Yeah.
Just say no to bad stuff.
Yeah, just say no to poverty. This song is fucked up. Hold strong when everything you loved is gone. Slow down and stop living in the shadow of a helicopter. Wait, he also says save your money for hired guns. So is he like, is hired guns a metaphor here? Like, is he like, people are like, well, they wouldn't be so poor if they didn't have iPhones. And you're like, people need phones, man. Like, this is, hold on, the worst is yet to come.
Like, let's say that you've chosen to live in Syria as your choice.
Yeah.
Just
You were born in San Diego, but you were like, Syria's the place for me.
or even if you were born in Syria, but you're living there now and you're like, this is fucked up. All you got to do is get on Airbnb, just see what else is out there somewhere else.
Just hop on a plane. It's not a problem.
I think the problem also is like this is why you should never ever tell somebody what your song is about ever. If you've written something that's kind of obtuse and someone says, "Yo, what's that song about?" Don't be like, "Well, basically I was driving my Escalade and then I was in the shadow of a helicopter and then I was like, damn, this is someone's real life." And like, I wonder where they park their Escalades in war zones.
Right. Yeah. It's so weird when you're in like, I don't know what the bad part of LA is, like the bad part of LA. And you're like, where are all the Escalades? Where did they hide them?
Yeah. I don't know, just don't, like, if he had just left it and didn't say that, then people would be able to, like, sort of, the death of the artist is actually very valuable to Blink-182, I think.
But what is, like, seriously, like, stop living in the shadow of a like, this is some pull yourself up by your bootstraps, young man. I had to walk, 10 miles uphill both ways to go to school, and, like, this is basically like the sonic equivalent of, like, pull up your pants.
I mean, I honestly do think that he's probably just doing these interviews, a million interviews at once, and maybe he said the rest of the thought somewhere else, but just forgot to. It's like when you try to explain Bill Billingsley to someone. Right. Sometimes you miss details, and then they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to explain his disappearance, his time in the wilderness."
Right. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention that he also owns Travis Barker's car. That's like a whole other thing that makes him kind of important to the narrative.
Yeah, it's like, so maybe he just kind of was tired of talking about it, or maybe he was just trying to get it over quickly. But there, obviously, I want to believe that the song is not just about if you're living in a war zone, don't. He must be using that as the starting point for some sort of other metaphor, like about a relationship or something.
But it's the end of the chorus. It's the thought he has ultimately arrived at.
So good.
Do you remember when Sum 41 put out that record that was like, "We Went to a War Zone," the album? Mm-hmm. That was cool.
Love it.
Now I'm going to go back and check those lyrics and see what Derek Whibley and co. have to say about helicopters.
I mean, that is a whole thing. Like, I did a whole clickbait thing for Aux now called A-Side about this, about like, because people love to put in their music videos just like protests, but you can't tell what they're protesting. They just put the word Occupy. Like, there's literally like... There's a Angels and Airways video, and there's a couple Nickelback videos, I think, where it's just like, we'll fight the system, we'll fight the machine, and then there's just like Guy Fawkes masks or whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, what's oh my God, Russell Brand, Get Him to the Greek. What's like his big hit single called? That's just about like, won't someone do something? Like, it's just
right.
It's the most like note perfect kind of parody of this like empty pop, like, someone stop the suffering. You're like, what?
Well, at least Mark has a solution here, which is just like, stop. Just don't do it.
Just don't do it, man. Yeah.
Say no to poverty. Just say no. Dare to keep kids off of poverty.
Yeah. This is his brave stance. And, we've actually been looking for a charity for Blink-155. So of course, we want to make sure that we cover, our hosting costs and a little bit of our time, but we're not doing this for us. We live lives of relative privilege, and it's important for us to kind of give back. And so we've been waiting for the last 54 weeks to try to find.
Are you about to announce a GoFundMe that's like stop living in the shadow of a helicopter?
Yeah, that would be, honestly, I think that should be our charity. Stop living in the shadow of a helicopter, and we don't give money to people who live in the shadows of helicopters, but we talk very directly to them through the
it's a
medium
viral
of
branding
podcast.
campaign. It's a marketing campaign.
It's basically Coney 2012 is what it is.
We just put up billboards that are like, "Don't live here.
Don't live
Go
here.
somewhere else."
And
There's probably some place there's probably a mall around here. You can go get some air conditioning.
Totally, at least hang on the air conditioning. And just like Coney 2012, this whole thing ends with like you naked and furiously masturbating in the street.
Wow, that is a very Blink ending.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, well we've talked about the lyrics. Let's refer back to this thread on Reddit.
Right. I forgot that we left a whole thought here.
Bid exist, which I assume is a This Exists reference.
Mm-hmm. It's about bidets, actually. Short form for bidets.
Scooping the internet's bidet content.
Just right up into your thirsty knowledge hole.
When are you going to make more This Exists, though? We all want to know.
Well, I've got a couple of scripts, but I've just been waiting for the right idea to sort of be sitting on the lip of that bidet for me to sort of scoop
all right,
into
so this
my
person
brain.
said, "This song changed my life. Whenever I end up getting a Blink tattoo, it'll be based in this song." Los Graham wrote, "That's cool. Any ideas what the tattoo will be?" And this is where the literalness of this really blows my mind. Yeah, I'm thinking a panoramic scene with objects made out of the words of the song. The overall scene would be a helicopter and people and a shadow, maybe a stop sign. So basically, there's people in the shadow of a helicopter with a stop sign in front of them. They're like, "Yo, what does this stop sign mean? I don't have my Escalade here,
Right.
so this doesn't apply." The stop sign is actually directed at them to stop living there.
That must be confusing if you live in like a poor part of a city, or again, you live in a war-torn country. And traditionally, like where I live, and presumably Josiah, where you live, when I see a stop sign, that means, stop driving your Escalade. But very few realize that it actually has a totally different meaning inside of poverty-stricken urban centers or war-ravaged countries, where it actually says, it means stop living here. It's
actually,
it's like a hang in there, kitty poster.
I wasn't expecting us to bring this up, but the stop sign was a crucial element in Travis's recent car accident.
Oh.
Because over the weekend, while we were doing the live stream, he was hit. His SUV was hit by a school bus in LA and totaled.
Do you think? I mean, you made a joke about don't twitch and drive or whatever on the Twitter. But do you think there's a chance that if it wasn't him, like maybe the bus driver was distracted while enjoying our lag-filled live stream?
It's possible, because it just came out today that Travis said the school bus driver ran a stop sign.
It's bad, man.
Or actually, maybe it was a red light, and I didn't need to bring this up anyways. But either way,
it's fine. That man has bad fucking luck, though, eh?
I know, it's crazy. I hope he's okay. I love Travis.
Yeah. While we're talking about news, do we have to talk about Sacha Baron Cohen or no?
I mean, everyone's going to keep tagging us in it and DMing it to us for the next 6 months. So
can we just say we saw it? I personally thought it was very funny.
Yeah,
and we're good.
Saw it. I saw someone say Blink-182. Saw it.
Yeah, it's
Thanks.
Good. Yep. Okay.
So we were being a little bit hard on Mark, but I did want to show you this because this literally made me fall in love with him again. So this was like, Neighborhoods was still of the era where they were like, where they were still doing like vlogs and stuff. It was new enough that you didn't have to watch some like 180p enhanced CD video like the albums before.
Right.
So Mark shared this vlog, and I guess he was trying to do like a harmony late at night. So I'm just going to play this. It's so adorable.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Mark Hoppus, and I'm coming to you from inside the Blink-182 studio where just trying to trying to write a what? Yeah, at 3:45, I was trying to write this background. Sorry, trying to write this background harmony, and I want to play it for you because I had no idea what I was doing going into it, so I was trying to write it as I was singing it, but the result is really something awful and special. So I'm going to treat you all to it right now. Sorry. Money for hired guns. When everything. Stop living in the shadow of a helicopter. So, oh my gosh! So as you can tell. As you can tell, things are going great. The record's coming along awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm glad that I could share that with you all. Enjoy. There'll be another update soon. Sorry about that.
I mean, that's like actually pretty fucking charming.
Yeah, it's adorable. I love it.
Also, did people, and maybe, like, I don't mean to jump ahead here, but, something that we have covered on the California episodes is that whenever they would release, like, one Instagram video of a drum part, someone would build an entire song around it and be like, hypothetically, this is a reconstruction of what the song could sound like. So did people try to take those, like, and somehow turn it into a
someone, like,
song?
spent 8 hours editing out the giggles.
Right, yeah. Because he is unfortunately spoiled. Like he's Jimmy Falloning. If I can now be critical of Mark Hoppus again, he's sort of like corpsing through what actually probably would have been pretty. I mean, it's charming, but give the joke some room.
Right. Damn, Mark can't win with us.
Well, I think it's important to reiterate that the song is like really good. And I know that this is, I knew the minute that we started listening to it, this is going to be something that, like, I was just going to start putting on playlists now because it's that rare Blink-182 song that I realize I have not played to death, but that it still holds some semblance of the thing that I love about them. So
I also just think, imagine how much corny stuff there must be from, like, the new sessions that we could be getting, you know? But
do you think, well, I guess the impression that we now have of the neighborhood sessions is that they were, mired in disagreement and highly contentious and like not terribly fun for anyone involved. And yet you still get a video like this, which is extremely corny and fun and delightful. But I still, despite sort of having that knowledge, I kind of feel like in my mind, the California sessions were just like punch in, punch out. Like those are people going to work. I just wonder how ultimately charmed we could possibly be by the sessions that produced.
I just also I am curious if you reach a threshold where you're like kind of want to just seem really cool and then you don't want to make fun of yourself anymore. You don't want to like, you're no longer self-deprecating because you're trying to like prop up that you still got it. And then that might be the issue now.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
That's why you don't want to admit that Dude Ranchers come.
Ew, gross. Goddamn.
So, this song is named after the day that Mark wrote it. Pretty actually boring day in history, to be quite honest.
Is it a boring day in history, Josiah?
But I did find this, and if you're wondering where Tom was, I have a feeling it might have been here.
Holy shit. So, Josiah, you just sent me a link to a subreddit literally called Solving 41818. I don't know what the other 18 is for, but it's about an alien body that was uncovered in Burятия, Russia on April 18th, 2011. So on the day that Mark was writing the song, Tom was in Russia uncovering alien bodies.
One can only assume. I mean, this video, you gotta just... There's just like some very Russian dudes wearing very Russian hats talking and walking through the snow. And then it just kind of looks like they half burnt an E.T. doll and left it in the snow. Like, I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong. This is fantastic, but it's like one of the worst I don't know. I should do the test on Sarah later because she really wants to believe so hard that she might believe.
I mean, given that this video has less than 4,000 views and even the post on Reddit only has 2 upvotes, I have a feeling that not too many people were got by this.
But it did happen on the same day as the song. So that's just pretty much... but like even I had this whole idea that I was going to sidetrack us with a whole bunch of bullshit from stuff that happened on the same day as the song.
But then there just wasn't that much.
There wasn't even anything very funny. There was just like uploads of like someone doing a vlog about getting into paleo, and then like a city hall meeting where an old lady was yelling at. She like yells at the guy. She says a bunch of shit in German, and then she's like, "Since you're not listening to us anyways, I figured I may as well speak to you in German because it doesn't make a difference, does it?" And then everyone cheers. And then like I looked up like people who died on this day, and it's like just like total no-name people. It was truly an uneventful day.
Wow. Well, except for that was it. This song sucked up all of the energy and maybe saved a few lives, I guess, in the process.
Right. And just encourage people to just like see if there's some new condos being built in your neighborhood or a few neighborhoods over instead of, you know. I mean, you don't want to be the condos have helipads so that there's no shadow because they park on the roof. So you don't have to worry about you're just living under the like parking spot of a helicopter.
It's like poor people don't even know about helipads, which is
exactly
fucked up.
They make me sick. But yeah, I'm going to just move right into covers.
Okay.
Cuz like I don't know. I mean, what do these fucking people want? We've said we like the song and then we said all the things that are wrong with it.
We were very critical of Mark Hoppus.
The bridge is good, though. It's like
the whole song's good.
Yeah, the whole song is good, and it doesn't sound like Blink-182, but I do wish that he was still just doing like full-on smart guy alt rock these days.
Yeah, I mean, but this is obviously still in there, and it does. A song like this raises a lot of questions for me because when we've done other Neighborhoods tracks, I think we've discussed the fact that there's like elements there that you still kind of recognize. And in listening to this song, I'm like, this would be fine. If this is sort of what Blink kept doing, it feels like a pretty honest direction to go. And it's just like a little slower. It's a little more deliberate. It's a little more fascist, I guess. And that's just sort of like where you go as you age. And that's totally fine. And California feels like such a deliberate attempt to recreate like the real heyday, and now that that's maybe out of the system, it's like can you keep exploring this side of obviously where you kind of want to be working, and that's sort of interesting to me.
Listening to him overthink things is still, as much as it's flawed, it's still better than listening to him underthink things.
Yeah, that seems good.
But yeah. Let's go into covers, but I actually don't know if this is a cover or not. Speaking of things that have the numbers, this is like a Russian soundscape artist. The name is 66-65254. This was uploaded in April of this year, but if you look at the title of the song, after the numbers 13, it's 04/18/2011.
Okay, so it could be a cover.
It could be, but let's play some of it. So that was 66-65254.
Yeah, that was a great cover.
I actually thought it sounded sick, but I think that like ambient soundscape music is so easy to bullshit, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all the parts that go between the like 28 Days Later moments in Godspeed songs is how I think of this.
Yeah, there was a time when I was like deep into it and like buying vinyls of it and then just like vibing out in the living room, and then after a while I was like, I've wasted a lot of money.
I remember like when I was in high school and I discovered like college radio and college radio kind of programming. And I mean, there was like the sick punk show, Mods and Rockers, which, holy shit, this week's guest was a host on and off with JC and with Sandy, also from the same band. I like that I'm being cagey about it. But on Sunday night, CKLN had this show that like I can't remember the name of it. It was like, you know, Majestical Skyscape or whatever, and it was like all that shit where it was just like nothing, and then like a penny being dragged across a cymbal with heavy reverb for 20
Right.
minutes, and I would listen to it in, you know, my bedroom in my parents' house in deep suburban Etobicoke and feel like, yo, this is like real art and real adult
Totally.
music. Like, I'm so grown up for appreciating this. And then I like never listened to it again. Like the minute I was out of high school, I was like, I basically just like Blink-182 again.
Yeah, that's smarter than my journey. But
My journey was
had a
cheaper.
similar thing where I would put on Brave New Waves on CBC
Oh,
Radio,
yeah.
which was truly incredible. But then I would like fall asleep and wake up, and like Miranda July would be doing some fucked up spoken word, and it was like 4 a.m. on a school night. Like, what's going on? I'm so confused.
That's so sick.
But I've just realized we are talking about the importance of radio.
Oh, see? This
See?
is nothing if not our greatest pop punk song, Josiah.
Well, let's. We haven't revisited this guy in a little while, and I think he's been underrepresented on the pod. So let's go with good old
Odie
Michael
Acoustic.
Showalter looking man himself, Odie Acoustic.
Fucking Coop.
Yeah, it's absolutely cool. From the original, though, on present day. Okay, here we go.
Coming in, kill the radio silence. Break down in LA. Giving in to a feeling of violence. There's hell to pay, so let's light another match. Stop living in the past when nobody can hear me now. Blow the lock of the cage, watch your children come of age. When the parents stop to take a bow. Nothing takes root in this barren soil. Nothing takes root in this barren soil. Maybe there's no one there at all. Hold on.
What a talent Odie Acoustic is. He does the thing that I hate, and he makes me love it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and there's some sort of cool backmasking going on in the background that I kind of liked.
No, there you go. That's
But it's just like too
your old drone days coming back to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's too. I don't know. It's too nice. It's like, what are we fucking walking down the aisle right now?
Hell yeah, man. I don't think you realize that after the anniversary would come our nuptials.
It's a bit backwards, but
To me, it's just a reminder of the fact that, like, the song is good. Like, that's a really good song. When he gets to that chorus, you're like, oh, yeah, there it is.
I know. And the pre-chorus has a nice little extra chord in there too. Like this is someone who has thought about what they're doing, who wrote this song.
Whoever it is.
Mom Hilong.
Yeah.
So,
Mom Hallam
okay.
sounds like a cult leader, right?
Well, Tom DeLonge is definitely nothing if not a cult leader.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's all kind of fitting together. If anyone's still listening at this point and wants to make a sort of like Mom Hallam poster or whatever, I'd be stoked.
Yeah. Just keep doing shit for us, everyone.
Please.
Keep doing free shit for us.
It makes me feel powerful and ultimately less alone in this terrifying world. Oh,
So-
yep. I guess this is
We
it.
gotta do these guys.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, but again, like, okay, so we're gonna have to listen to Future Idiots, the people who decided to take it upon themselves to fix the album in its entirety, and they also just do generic covers of already pop punk songs that sound kind of the same, which is what I think of this one. Like, this song is closer to a pop punk song, so I feel like Future Idiots sort of, I don't know. Let's see.
Okay. I hated that. Mm-hmm. They made the song bad.
They did.
More like the future idiots.
More like the good.
Thanks.
Really good.
Thanks.
They turned it into like I want to say a song that would be on a free promotional BMX DVD that someone would hand you at the mall, and then this song would be on the menu.
It sounds like a good Charlotte song to me. Like this to me.
That's like deeply disrespectful.
I know, and I don't want to sort of be rude to your friends in the Charlotte, but that's what when I think about Good Charlotte, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, you're wrong, but I know what you're trying to say. But it's more, this is more like
imagine that, but less personally offensive to you.
It's more like it's like a guy that lives in Banff and has his own shitty tattoo parlor. That's what his band would sound like.
Yes, you're right. Okay, this is very much like Banff tattoo parlor guy's band for sure.
Which, okay, I'm gonna play two
called
more.
Like the Cross and Dove.
Exactly. Oh God, everything is awful. But you know what is good? You know what's really good is nerdy ass teens.
Oh, teens!
I assume these guys are teens based on their facial expressions and everything, and their band name, which is 314 on Main Street, which is absolutely a fictional band that was created to be on a Battle of the Bands poster in the background of an episode of Degrassi, I assume.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, these dudes are teens.
So, okay, let's listen to this charming ass one. I love it.
Yo, I love them. Can we listen to one of their original tracks? So these guys are from Algonquin, Illinois. They are absolutely a real band, and they appear to have grown up only slightly. So, like, one of the dudes straight up, and I feel bad about this, but, like, the one guy literally looks like McLovin, and then the other guy has since grown a beard, but in the art for the Blink cover, he's got, like, teenage mutton chops that are, like, so ratty and disgusting. And then the other guy just looks like the bass player in, like, every Fest band, where you're like, has anyone ever talked to Chris? It's like that.
Well, I want to just say the sloppiness of that was so charming that it made the song sound like an early Piebald song.
Oh, fuck yes. It totally did.
And I loved it.
Like,
for that reason.
fundamentally, like, musically competent, but just sort of, like, played with a degree of ineptitude and abandon.
Which is the way it should be done, baby.
Yeah, Hundo P, bro.
Okay, 314 on Main Street. Let's hear Headache, and then we'll do our final cover before we get to our guest.
Hell yes.
Screaming in silence.
And now that sounds like later piebald in a bad way.
Yeah, that's an interesting riff to sort of jam in there. I was thinking for a second, I was like there's bands you don't realize like the influence they've had. Like Modern Baseball is one where like all of a sudden every 20-year-old's band sounds like Modern Baseball. The other thing that like I didn't see happening at the time, but like you see now is Bomb the Music Industry and Jeff Rosenstock, and like how many bands are doing like that thing, whether it's like Pup or it's Smith Street Band or whatever. And that's what that riff sounded like to me and then it sounded nothing like Bomb. But for a second, that riff, I was like, not everyone can pull off the things that Jeff does. And then it was clear that wasn't even what they were going for, and I was adrift.
Yeah, then it started sounding like the Drew Carey Show or something.
It was a great show, though. Oswald's, what a joker.
Okay, well, I know you're not going to believe. I know it's going to be hard to believe, but I found something even better than whatever that band was called, which I already forget.
That's fair.
This is Cube Clone Theory.
Yep.
I'm not really sure. I didn't read about them yet, but their Facebook has been deleted. Yeah, I'm just going to play this, and please watch and please enjoy.
Another perfect video that shows just kids having a nice time. It's the best. I love them.
It's so good. So these dudes are just like not in the garage, in the driveway in front of the garage, fully set up, rocking out.
It's the most suburban setup. There's like a janky basketball net that clearly hasn't been used in years. It's like so busted.
There's laundry drying beside the guitarist. They've got a PVPA. Is that a New York plate on the car? I was trying to figure out where this is.
It's somewhere in New York. I mean, it's extremely suburban, clearly, because they're rocking. And the one guy's got like the bass player's playing like a Rickenbacker, like a literal.
I think he's playing like one of those like Paul McCartney basses.
Yeah,
isn't he?
He's straight up playing like a Paul McCartney model Rick.
But in their cover of "Damn It," which I watched earlier. I don't know if he was doing it in this one too, but sometimes he'll spin the bass and start playing it like left-handed, and then he'll spin back and play it right-handed again.
He does it a bit
versa.
in this video, but it's like it looks like he's about to throw it, and then he's not, but it's still like a move.
Yeah, he still keeps like switching it. I don't know. This is so good. This is like, and it just kind of looks. Something about the way they're dressed and everything, this looks like it's in a sitcom also.
Totally. And like they've put some effort into it, right? Like they've clearly shot it a few times. There's the one kind of like wide of the three of them, but then there's like a cut in for the drummer. Like they all get their own angles, and it's very clear that that's just like multiple takes. And my favorite thing though is that the top comment from Marvin Ray is, if your bassist would start playing with a pick, it would sound better. Like, first of all, a pick and a bass player is like, that's some real like layman shit. And also like, as if you can hear that in this recording.
Yeah, I know. I feel like they're just kind of not lip syncing, but playing to a pre-recorded track.
Totally. And this is like absolute grade A teens, at least around the garage, playing a cover and making me just like love life.
Yeah, which I think
very
is
honestly.
my final thought is that the song is very well written, and the sign of it being really well written is that the sloppier it's played, the more charming it is. Yeah. I think that's always a good sign. Like everything's there that like someone can be barely hanging on, and you're like, damn, this sounds even better now.
Yeah, totally.
Which makes me wish they played it live.
Did they never play this live?
No.
Yeah.
Probably because I don't even think Tom has ever played it. He might have never even heard it.
Right. Yeah. He was just like, it looks like a virus. I'm not opening this. And so that was what he meant.
Right. Mom Hilong.
Yes, his mom along himself. Yeah, I mean, my final thought on this is this has happened a few times with songs that I hadn't spent a lot of time with, or that I was less familiar with. I was like, oh shit, this song's good. I need to give it more of a shake. But this is really one where I like kind of can't believe how little attention I paid to this song, and coming off of a week. And really kind of 2 weeks, because the Short Music for Short People episode was also like a 30-hour recording process, sort of coming off of 2 to 3 of our sort of like most thorough and exhausting podcast
Not to mention
experiences.
joke season was also quite a slog.
Right, there was joke season. To just like come out to this song where I was like, oh, this is like some throwaway piece of shit neighborhood song, and instead leave infatuated by the song, and also just reminded of what this band can do when they're doing it right, even when it's not like classic perfect era, just makes me feel like this entire project, while it certainly lacks purpose, at least won't leave me living in the shadow of a proverbial helicopter when it's all over.
Yeah, I mean, if you do feel like that, though, just don't do like.
Just don't.
If anyone out there is feeling like their lot in life is too much, and that their disadvantages and the way that things have been stacked against them is too much to handle, just say no.
Yeah,
just don't do it.
Just stop.
Yeah.
So you
to-
said there was nothing on this date, and you lied.
I did lie, and I apologize to you. There is a very serious and explosive thing that happened on this day.
A huge moment in the history of Blink-182.
So it actually starts 2 days earlier, on April 16th, 2011, on my Twitter page, which I gotta say, like I've mentioned before, I use this app called Time Hop so I can see things I've said on this day in the past or whatever. And I can kind of see how embarrassing I used to be. Just kind of like, or at least embarrassing in different ways than I am now. Now it's more of a little bit more of a calculated embarrassing.
Yeah.
Back then it was more like, all my statuses start with is. It's like, is so tired from work and can't wait for the weekend. Or like, just like fucking awful.
Yeah.
Just like delete my account. But I don't know what I was on about in April 16th. There must have been something to do with Damian shouting out Danko Jones. And I wrote, kind of mad that I'm listening to Danko Jones right now. Thanks, Left for Damian. And I don't know why. I mean, growing up in Western Canada, there's a difference. Because I think in Toronto and stuff, everyone seems to have this like respect for Danko Jones as like an elder of punk or something.
Yeah, Danko's a punk man.
But in Western Canada, I didn't know that. I just sort of knew him as like, I don't know, something corny from Much Music. I probably like got him confused with Hawksley Workman or something.
Yeah, that was a problem for me because it was still before my time, and so it took someone like schooling me to be like, no, Danko's like an OG punkman in the city.
So I tagged Damian because he had mentioned this. So then 2 days later, on April 18th, 2011, Damian Abraham from Fucked Up tweeted at me, "It'll give you a break from Blink-182." To listen to that.
Which is a good diss. Given
It's a
that
good diss.
your life has followed that exact trajectory.
I've been doing it because my old band Grown Ups did like a little West Coast run or Western Canadian run with Fucked Up way long ago. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I just drunkenly tried to get all of them to talk to me about Blink-182 the whole time. Which is why Ben and I still talk all the time, because he's into it. But then seeing that two Canadian punker guys were talking on April 18th, 2011, Sam Sutherland weighed in and said, "Why would you want to break from listening to Blink-182?" And then... Yeah. And then my thoughts, I wrote to you, my thoughts exactly, Damian, get Mark Hoppus as your next guest appearance, which I believe is in reference. Was he doing Turned Out a Punk back then? He must have been.
Yeah. Unless he was just doing the Wedge then, but he must have been doing Turned Out a Punk.
And then Sam Sam weighed in again on April 18th, 2011. Sam tagged Mark Hoppus, borderline snitch tag, but that's a conversation for another day. And he said, "This is Sam being Mr. Connections, like as if he's like friends with Mark."
Fuck on.
He's like, "Okay, guys, now that we're in a safe place, let's make this happen. Damian, Mark, Damian." And then Damian replied again on April 18th, 2011. "I actually met Mark Hoppus at the Elmo in 1996 when they played with 10 Days Late. Do you remember, Mark?" And so we had an entire conversation about Blink-182, proto Blink-155, with Damian. Mark Hoppus was tagged and asked various questions by 3 prominent people. I think at least you, probably Damian, were verified. Mark would have seen. So
He
I
must
was
have
like,
seen.
I was like, why
there's
didn't
no
Mark
way I was
reply?
verified. He definitely saw Damian's tweets, though.
Why didn't Mark reply? But the reason was he was like deep into his helicopter theory writing this song.
Or these tweets were what influenced him, and then he had to come up with this weird thing about the helicopter. But maybe
That's a good point.
We're the helicopter.
Either way, because we're celebrating the date of April 18th, 2011, we need to continue our 3-way conversation about Blink-182 with Damian Abraham from Fucked Up.
Nothing takes root in this barren soil. Nothing takes root in this barren soil. Maybe there's no one there at all.
Were you doing Turned Out a Punk in 2011,
No.
or would it have been The Wedge?
It would have been probably the Wedge.
Okay.
It would have had to have been the Wedge because
You didn't have
Turn
a
Out
radio
Punk,
show of it. Okay, that's weird. Let me see the phrasing here.
Turn Out a Punk did not come into existence till 2000. What was it? 15.
Oh, okay. So
It was after I got fired from Much Music.
right. Okay. Well,
It was my taking the power back, and it was my way of keeping the parts of the Wedge that I could do on my own still there, which is the intensely nerdy conversation about punk.
People complain that our podcast is too Canadian, and we've already name dropped Brave New Waves earlier, and now we've got a little Wedge section going on here. So, but you know what? I don't think they deserve an explanation. Fuck them.
no.
And also, Josiah, the Wedge aired in Canada on Fuse TV at 2:00 in the morning for about a year period, so it was a hit in America as well.
There you go.
Show some more respect, Josiah, please.
I'm so sorry. I wouldn't want to
God damn it.
specifically for Cam Lindsay alone. I'll show that respect.
Well, I would like to go on record right now and saying, like, you know, once again, ahead of the curve that we were. The Wedge, I think, could have saved Much Music, and I mean specifically my era of the Wedge, not just because of myself, of course, obviously not, but like Cam Lindsay has gone on to heights within this Canadian music industry. He's now a content, I don't know, acquirer, I guess, for a large music service. And also, as he will be forever known to me, my friend Gary on that show, Jason Richards, is now the head of Super Deluxe, or does a lot of stuff content creation wise for Super Deluxe. So, you know, we were ahead of the curve. We had like a king of comedy and a king of music there. You know, we could have saved that.
I loved it. Sincerely, I did. I really loved watching it, and it was like, it felt like a fun thing to watch on TV, which is a rare thing now.
I think
Sadly.
it was cool. It was cool because, like, now I realize, and I think I realized at the time, like, no one was watching. We could do whatever we wanted. And, like, I just can't believe I had that freedom on national TV. And instead of using it for something positive, I turned it into a high school drama class.
But that's positive, man. People, people do like to be entertained, like Josiah was saying.
Yeah, definitely. You're right.
Yeah. But, okay.
Well, that's why we're doing this podcast right now, talking about Blink-182.
Yeah.
So this is basically, we've already run it down on the regular show, but basically how it ended was, you said, Damian Abraham said, I actually met Mark Hoppus, tagged Mark Hoppus, at the Elmo in 1996 when they played with 10 Days Late. Do you remember, Mark?
Yeah.
And we're like, damn, Mark snubbed Damian, but it's because he was writing this song, so he was busy, I guess.
He was busy, I guess, that day. That's probably the only reason he didn't return my tweet. I I kind of feel this dude also has been kind of like low-key ducking turned into punk for a couple years now. He said he'll do it, but it is yet to be done. I did meet him briefly back then. It was more my brother though that became kind of friends with him because my brother and I were Punishers. We did a zine that of course never came out in traditional Punisher fashion, and we would talk to bands and ask them to do interviews for our zines. And so I left that show earlier. It was 10 Days Late, Body Jar, and Blink-182. It was an Elmo matinee upstairs, Elmo Combo, historic punk venue. I'm sure that's come up on the show many, many times, of course. We
mostly talk about dicks and stuff.
I left to go to a party at someone's house that I was dating, I guess, in the most juvenile high school way possible, and left the show early. And my brother did this interview with the band by himself at the age of 13, I think, 12, maybe he was 12, 11.
I like that your brother, in my mind, is like sort of like his music taste seem much more aligned with my own, whereas I feel like, Damian, when we kind of chat about music, I'm always like, ooh, I'm just not into the really cool shit. And then like you'll be like, my brother loves Dashboard and Mark Hoppus. I'm like, that's the Abraham after my heart, I think.
Yeah, like I want to know what's like the most embarrassing gateway band for Damian.
Oh God, like I'm not. I just think like my embarrassing gateway bands are slightly different than your guys because I'm like slightly older than you guys. Like I was talking actually to my brother about this today because he was talking to me about your podcast, and we were like, he's like, yeah, like it's like amazing that they're doing like a whole podcast about Blink-182, and I'm like, yeah, like to you guys, like my brother included, Blink-182 is like my Pennywise or my NoFX, like that's my band, and like I'm not embarrassed about liking those bands, but certainly they're no Ism and Neurosis.
You didn't like just turn 12 and get into Killed by Death comps or whatever?
No. But I like it's funny because they're like I interviewed Dwid from Integrity on the podcast, and just by luck, one of the first bands he ever got into was Gizom because he bought a compilation that they happened to be on. So like you could stumble in and be into cool stuff right out of the bat, right out of the gate, I should say. But like I wasn't, into the coolest stuff right away. Sonic Youth, I guess I was into Sonic Youth. They're pretty cool.
It was a pretty cool band.
As someone a little bit older, though, does that mean, like, and just be honest with this, I know we all want to be friends with everyone now, and we all are trying for that, but there must have been a time that you hated Blink-182 and thought they were pieces of shit.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because, like, I've actually, Mark, I met one time. Tom DeLonge I've met a couple times. And one of the times that I met Tom DeLonge, it was when they played The Warehouse, and my friends and I were backstage. We got backstage passes somehow. Maybe Maryland's Vitamins played too, and that's how we all had backstage passes. I'm trying to remember how we all got backstage passes. But, our thing was just like trying to fuck with them, and just like, like taking, like my friend was like, I forget one of us said something to him, like kind of like dissing, and he starts yelling at him, and I walk up beside him and steal like a selfie, like super early on for selfie, I gotta say. Cell phone. It was like a
proto
35
selfie
millimeter camera. Yeah, 35 millimeter selfie. Oh no, my friend Zach snapped the picture, so it wasn't a true selfie, I guess. But we just thought it was like funny to do that. And by that point, yeah, like I wasn't a fan, and like, but that's just because I was an insecure teenager, like, and I think part of being an insecure teenager is rejecting what has become popular. And especially if you're an insecure teenage punk, you have to reject whatever is drawing in the kids one generation after you. Like, it's just like a rule. I can remember talking to Simon Harvey when I was a kid and trying to like convince him that like, the bands that I was into were cool, and he's like just like so dismissive of it. And I guess
he's actually kind of a dream guest on the pod. I would love to make him listen to like brand new Blink-182.
When we started the podcast, this was like a serious goal of Josiah's. He was like, I only want to have guys like Simon Harvey on the pod.
Well, like, I think that, it's funny because like when you place Blink-182, in like the punk rock universe. They're like an interesting band to me because it's not like they came out of, Oxnard, California, where you had like, Lagwagon and 10-Foot Pole, or like Los Angeles, really close by there, we have Strung Out, and like, the Bay Area, which had like a real fertile punk scene, like, of all the different types. The punk scene that they came out of, it's like when you think about that, you think about like Vulcan Haircuts, or you think about Rock from the Crypt, or you think about, like these kind of like serious bands. You don't think about like Epitaph kind of influenced pop punk coming out of it, or skate punk, coming out of it. But yet the biggest band in that genre comes out of San Diego.
It's true. Like Justin Pearson never would have played on something called the Poo Poo Pee Pee Tour, which appears to be the show that you attended at the Warehouse, where at the very least I can figure out that the Vandals opened, but it doesn't say anything about locals.
I'm trying to remember. Maybe they were opening for someone else. Because, they did play, and they also played the Warehouse a couple times. They also played one time with the Aquabats, right?
Yeah. Well, what was that Elmo experience like? The one that you referenced and that Mark so rudely ignored on the day that this song was written.
Or wrote a song about,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah, we don't
wrote a song
know.
about.
Yeah.
The violence he's talking about was our Twitter assault on him that day.
About me.
Yes, I
it's
did.
about me being
I
a
did watch the
Punisher.
lyric video for this song.
Yeah, you prepared, eh?
What'd you think of it?
I had
How
to do
did you
the
like the song?
I think it's good. I don't dislike any era of Blink-182. Like, when I was like that brief moment where I was like dismissing that band, but later on, like, and it's funny now, I've got like a lot of respect for them because you hear, I've heard like on the podcast, like people come on and talk about how they heard about Fugazi through Blink-182, or they heard about Jimmy Eat World or H2O, or like, any number of other bands that they heard about through Blink-182. And it's like, these guys were repping for the team the whole time. So, I never really disliked them or disliked any of their music that much. And I think this song, once again, it's not like speaking to me in the same way that like, Tetsuo Arai speaks to me, but at the same time, it's like, it's not bad. It's catchy. I can see why people like it.
I find it really interesting to talk to you about this specific thing because in one way, one could argue that might have happened in the trajectory of Fucked Up, where you guys sort of like got so big that you would see a lot of like the snobs kind of rejecting you. That
absolutely, yeah.
Without those like aesthetic contextual signifiers, they probably would still love it, but they're just like, oh, it's on Pitchfork. I fucking hate this now.
Well, I think it happened to us several times, and I think that's the thing with Fucked Up. Like, I think any band that exists for a long enough period of time, you're going to go through a number of different fan bases. And it's amazing when you think about like, so many bands, once again, to annoy all your international, especially American listeners, when you think about like a band like Grade, and how many layers of Grade fans there are out there that have like one era of that band that they're like obsessed with. I can remember different times seeing that band, and it would be like, there'd obviously be people that kind of carried over, but almost like a complete changing of fan bases. And it's funny now because I'll meet people and talk to people that'll be like, oh, Grade, that record on Victory, that first record on Victory is incredible. And I was like, really? Like, that's the point where I knew a lot of people that were like, no, I don't like this. But then even, I knew a lot of people that didn't like Separate the Magnets. And I knew a lot of people that only liked them for the Grade Belief split. So I think it happens to every band that as long as you change your sound, and I don't mean that like for commercial gains, but I mean just like are constantly kind of playing around with your sound, you're going to cycle through fan bases and audiences as time goes on.
Okay, but do you know anyone who only likes the Head First Straight to Hell era of Grade?
That's what I'm saying. Like, people have told me that.
Like the weird like Halloween record?
Yeah, like the one with like the art that looks like it's like a Korn record or something, right?
yeah. The extremely nu metal aesthetic vibes.
Yeah, like we've played, because the thing is, like, Fucked Up has played some weird ass festivals in different places with some bizarre bands, and you get in these conversations backstage, with bands or with talking to people at the show, and like, yeah, like there are people that have told me straight up that that's their era of Grade, which would make sense. Like, if you're a kid who got that sampler CD or saw them on MTV or saw them with like another band opening, you know?
Sam got so mad at me because I just said that I just think of the singer of Grade's like facial hair or something. Like I never really got into them, and then Sam got really mad at me about that. So
It's
that's
still
why
a
I'm
fight.
not saying anything right now.
We're still fighting about it.
I think to me, Grade is like one of the most underrated Canadian bands. And like, you don't even have to like them as a band to kind of see their importance, because they invented a genre. And I know like so many people that are in that genre profess the fact that they were not the band that influenced them. Well, whatever band they liked was probably influenced by Grade, because I remember Grade was fucking low-key huge at that time. Like, you know, I guess broken social scene, now Drake kind of world where Canadian culture rarely translated outside of the borders of Canada. Grade was ginormous, like in terms of underground music. Like I remember reading interviews and meeting kids. I remember the guys from DBS coming to Toronto, leaving their own show to go to the Avail show, not to see Avail, but to see Grade, because Grade was opening, and they were just like so excited about it. And I remember talking to Andy from DBS about it. I'm like, these guys really? Like, you know, I was at that point not a fan. And he was like, yeah, no, I talked to a friend of mine back home, and she started to cry when I told her that I was going to see them today. That's how important this. And it's like, yeah, they like, you know, when you hear DBS's records post, I guess them hearing Grade, they definitely took an influence from that.
Well, I think the reason I probably dismissed Grade was with the teen insecurity you were just talking about with Blink-182. Yeah. But I think that is kind of what happens, right? Like you just see success, or you see what you like interpret as commercial viability, and you're like, I'm too cool for this. Fuck this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's like as you get older, you kind of realize like, oh yeah, it was just, you know, and you know, that's not to say you have to like everything. You can be like, this just isn't for me. But at the same time, like, yeah, like that kind of vitriol, like, oh, this fucking band. Oh, I gotta argue with fans that like them. I gotta like, you know, that I think is something that comes with, you know, teenage hormonal induced insecurity that unfortunately lasts in males into the 20s and sometimes in males for life.
Yeah, 30s. 30. I'm 32, so
yeah,
still mostly there.
Yeah, we're trying to work through it all. I think all of us, but
yeah.
You know.
Damien, do you think Josiah? Do you think Josiah was working through some of those feelings when Prenup toured with Fucked Up, and he constantly punished you with questions about Blink-182? Presumably as a way of preparing for this podcast.
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
I was gonna say pre-Prenup. We were on tour together. I can remember that first night that we met in Victoria, and that was, I think I had just started smoking cannabis. I just started smoking weed around that time, and you were very intense that evening. It was a very intense conversation.
I was very excited.
And I looked at Jonah like, who the hell are these guys?
Yeah. I feel like I was very much an insecure teen back then, even though I wasn't one, but I was.
Yeah. Oh no. And believe me, I we are all that person, you know, and I think that's why, you know, we find, you know, success in this music, or like we want to be involved in this music, or this music speaks to us, because this music is a genre designed for people that you know want to punish, you know, and especially in a pre-internet kind of way too, where you needed to like acquire information through verbal torture of people.
Well, in my mind, the absolute punk punisher is the person who like says like, punk is only this or only that. And I think through looking at Blink-182's many eras and different sounds, we are trying to understand A, whether or not they're a punk band, and B, what does the word punk, like, how do you define the word punk?
I think it's like anyone that, I think it's self-defined, you know, and I think that's like the thing that I find is, you know, especially now, once again, like doing this podcast where I talk about it all the time, like, it's whatever your own definition is. I've had tons of people on the show where I've been like, oh man, like that's not my definition of punk. But like at the same time, like they were able to find something that they needed through this genre, you know? And I'm the first to admit that there's people that, you know, think that I'm, you know, probably a huge fucking poser, and like I'm like, who am I to speak about this? Because I don't even have a copy of the Fixed Vengeance 7-inch. You know, like there's definitely people that could call me on my shit too, and I think that's the great thing about punk is it's like whatever you want it to be, it kind of is, and it's like it was a sellout genre from the very beginning, and it was also the realest genre on the planet from the very beginning. And I think there's so many like forces that are constantly dueling within punk, you know, at any given time. Like one time it's like a street music genre, and one time it's also like this super intellectual genre that's intertwined. At one point it's very progressive, and at one point it's very regressive, and those are always fighting with each other. So I think, you know, it's, you know, you take anyone that's involved in this music scene and ask them to define what it is, they're going to have a completely different definition. And like, you know, for better or for worse, like that's why this genre works.
Did you ever talk about the idea of punk in your interactions with Mark or Tom?
No, but I think my brother honestly was like, when we first met them, they were just like, they were probably into this stuff too, obviously, like into Fugazi and things like that. But then I remember my brother went to see them when they played with the Aquabats. I think it was the Aquabats, the Alcoholics, them, and I want to say like Primus. I remember being like a 4-band bill, and he went to, and I was like, I have no interest in going to that. And by that point, I was already firmly in the camp of like hardcore and Avail, and like that was where I wanted to be. You know, by that point, I already restricted my definition of what punk was and wasn't. And so my brother went to that show, and he came back, and he's like, it was crazy. They were backstage, and I played a Mineral, and I was playing them like great, and we were like talking about Jimmy Eat World, and like I'm like, oh, whoa, like this is where this is gonna go, huh? And like, and I also remember like Boxcar Racer when that happened too. I guess that would have been way after though. But going to that Boxcar Racer show and just seeing like, oh shit, like these guys now are like trying to do that Fugazi thing. And you know, like it's amazing how their own definition of punk evolved and changed over time.
Yeah, they're like almost like dress up dolls, where like you can just sort of apply any aesthetic to them, and it kind of works sometimes. Yeah,
like there's no period of them that I'm like, you know, they didn't look good. Even with that other old drummer, he looked great too.
Oh yeah,
Scott Rayner.
As you guys are like, you know, scholars in this field, whatever happened to that dude?
He's actually in not my thing, but sort of like a death rock band with a bunch of like teased hair, kind of punker studded leather jacket guys now.
Whoa.
They're called The Wraith.
They won't return any of Josiah's Facebook messages, though.
Yeah, I'm trying to punish them so hard, and it's not working.
It's heartbreaking.
I would love to talk that. One time we toured with Blink-182 one time in Australia. We got on a big festival tour, and it was like the tour that Travis couldn't go on because, of course, like obviously due to the accident he went through, he doesn't want to get on a plane. And so he didn't go on the plane. And so they brought Brooks from Bad Religion in to be the drummer, who we met on the Tenacious D tour because he drums at Tenacious D. He's like the nicest dude. But they still had all like those Travis Barker, like hero shot camera angles pre-programmed. So it would go to that over the back shoulder where you see his rippling muscles and all this, but it would just be Brooks in his Gap t-shirt, you know, still nailing the drum part, but just like didn't have the same visual impact.
So what was that tour like? I mean, you said you've only talked to Mark once, you've talked to Tom a couple of times. Like, did you guys had much interaction while you were, you know, down under? Oh, did you go to Wodonga by any chance?
No.
Okay.
No, they would not. It was, that tour is ridiculous because it was called Soundwave, and it was always one year it was like Metallica, Iron Maiden was another time. Blink-182 was on, I believe, the Metallica year. Paramore was on the Iron Maiden year. But then there would always be like, you know, so it was basically like the Warped Tour and Ozfest like mashed together. But then there'd always be like this random smattering of other bands that just kind of like, why are we here? And that's the category we always fit into. So we would kind of stick with our friends at that point. So it was like the Melvins, the Bronx, like Trash Talk, us, like, Danko Jones, like High on Fire. Like, that was kind of like the crew we kind of rolled with. And then there was the other bands that didn't talk to us as much.
Right, so Metallica wasn't
Brooks
like
one time walking down the street in Australia, and then we talked for a little bit. We caught up.
Well, that's sick. Has he done the pod yet? Like, has Brooks done your podcast yet?
Oh, you broke up.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no, Brooks has not done the podcast. I would love to have Brooks on because he, like, in addition to this, like, his brother played in Zappa or with Zappa.
Wow.
Did you play in Zappa or with Zappa? I guess you play both.
Right.
Or you don't do anything now.
Yeah. It's not as illustrious as it once was.
No, now it's like now you're playing with Dweezil and
Zappa does Zappa.
Moon Unit? Is it
Yeah, I think so.
Zappa.
I feel like if people talk about music for long enough, they eventually start talking about Zappa.
It's just, they're all circling the Zappa train.
Well, you got to talk about Zit Remedy to keep it on brand.
Hell yeah.
There we go.
There's already
like
been a
the idea of
Degrassi
us-
reference in this episode, too.
We're just so Canadian, but I like not explaining things very well for all the people around the world.
Well, I think Zit Remedy, hopefully, if you're a fan of punk, Zit Remedy because Propaganda covered him.
Oh, yeah.
But it's hard to say if the people that listen to a Blink-182 podcast are necessarily fans of punk, which sort of brings us back to the whole debate from earlier.
I have a question, Damian. How do you feel about, like, now we're entering an era where it's like nostalgia. Like, Blink-182 is currently doing their legacy act thing. I feel like streetwear brands or even hardcore bands are, like, hearkening back to early 2000s style. I mean, how do you feel about it? Is it weird seeing everything come back around?
No, well, I think it just happens over and over again, right? Like, that's just part of life, is like, watching the shit you hated come back again. So you have to live through it one more time. Except when it comes back normally for the second time, that's when it's critically reassessed, and for better or for worse. Like, I still think we're like a couple years away from Pitchfork giving a best new reissue to like a Limp Bizkit record or something.
Oh, definitely.
It just has to happen. It's part of the cycle. And like, that was probably the same way people felt about the Dead Boys. Like, there'll be a day when people will look at the Dead Boys as being good and like spitting at the side of their mouth, and it's like, that's one of the best bands ever.
But also, like, third wave ska is like big time happening right now. Like, at least visually, everyone's wearing the checkerboard, and ska just seems to be like just on the verge of popping out again.
Well, you know what? That's actually probably thanks to pro wrestling and Sami Zayn's ascent.
Right, that's
WWE.
the only wrestler I really know.
Well, he is one of the great wrestlers of all time. Not necessarily, the exact same taste in punk that I have, but he likes Operation Ivy, and I love Operation Ivy. So I think he probably even loves them more than I do, because, he is basically doing the Operation Ivy guy entrance.
So it's not like a ska character, like he's like true ska man.
Dude, no, he is 100% a fan. He's posted shit with him and Jesse Michaels. Like, he's gotten Jesse Michaels front row. He's got, like, I think he has an Op Ivy tattoo. It's amazing when you go through wrestling and you look at the punk connection in it, and like just which bands are like super important to people within wrestling that come from punk. CM Punk has an Operation Ivy tattoo. Maybe if Sami Zayn doesn't have an Operation Ivy tattoo, he at least has most of his merch kind of inspired by Operation Ivy. There's 3 wrestlers named after Davey Havoc. Countless wrestlers that enter to AFI music.
Good Lord. That's the other thing.
A lot
I feel
of
like
anti-flag fans.
Every podcast eventually becomes a wrestling podcast too, possibly. I think that might be a thing.
Because it's the truest art form out there. It's like the most real sport we got, everyone. And in 2018, it's it's where we put our political leaders in the Hall of Fame. You know, it's like, it's terrifying to think about, like, Donald Trump's ascent begins with his WrestleMania run.
But hopefully the next great democratic socialist leader that saves us all will also come from wrestling.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be The Rock, and I think he's going to run Republican.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Is there anything that you miss about your days of being a punk snob? Like, isn't it so much sweeter when you can just determine what is good and what isn't?
It's still, like, I think everyone has that snob in you, but you just, like, it just manifests itself kind of differently now. Like, mine is just in my record collection. Like, I think my record collection is probably the best it's ever been. And it's like, you know, it's funny now, like, once in a while people ask me to DJ, and I'll just, like, be like, no, you don't want me to do that, because I'm going to show up and play something that no one cares about. Like, and that's really where the snobbery is. Like, I got, you know, I'm surrounded by records that no one cares about, you know, except for other nerds that are willing to spend a lot of money on them, myself.
So it's like snobbery, like, in a glass half full sort of way.
Yeah, well, no, I just think it's like, you know, now it's like a personal snobbery as opposed to, like, that insecure, you know, kid where you need to impose that snobbery on other people. You know,
right.
Like, I think, honestly, I credit you and Jacob for, like, helping end my snobbery on some music. Because I remember that time we were all rolling around in Calgary during
in our shitty van.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about these bands and, like, being like, yeah, blah, blah, that band sucks, blah, blah, this band's good. And I was like, oh, weird, because, like, the bands you guys are saying good were bands that I used to say suck, but I love these people as people. Maybe I don't need to be a dick about the music anymore.
I also feel like I'm pretty sure that you ate 2 Big Macs in a row in our van.
I'm sure I ate 2 Big Macs in a row. That's you want to talk about my guilty pleasures. It involves all fast food. Like, it's not music related.
I feel like there's very few people who would appreciate this story, but when I was like 18, I worked at Taco Del Mar in BC. And one time the singer of Burden, Jason Burden, came in, and we didn't know each other by name, but I recognized him from shows, and he ate 2 burritos in a row, and I was, like, so impressed that I was just speechless.
It's funny, like, when you think about like great friendships that were inspired by eating a lot of food. I'm glad that you have 2 in your life.
I know I've still never spoken to Jason Burden, but every time someone talks about hardcore, I just think about that.
You're like, Jason, to me, you'll always be Burrito Boy.
Exactly.
I did this thing at the House of Vans last year where I interviewed Dillinger 4, and they were all hanging out after the show, and they have a dude who comes to see him anytime they're playing the Midwest, and he's, like, legit one of the champion eaters in the world, like one of those people that's on the circuit for like you know, professional eating, like enters all those big contests and has, like, world records for food stuff.
That's amazing.
It was very weird hang, and he was like incredibly wasted, and just like, I wanted to ask him all these questions about it, but, you know, he was just like partying, and so, you know, I let him party. So all those food guys must party super hard.
Oh yeah. Okay, I have one last question, and then I think I'm dry, but I want to ask you why, and I think Fucked Up is a really good example of this, as well as many other people. Why do you think that people with a hardcore background are so good at writing amazing pop songs? I'm thinking of, like, Tony Molina or Super Crush as well.
I don't know. I guess it's like, you know, it goes back to Dinosaur Jr. I think it's like, because people that are interesting in general come out of punk and hardcore, and we're at the tail end of this. But if you look at, and this is why I started doing my podcast in the first place, is because you look at every big indie rock band. Like, it's kind of like the way that every great wrestler that made it came through the hands of like, you know, Gabe Sapolsky or Paul Heyman. You know, every great indie rocker was a punk and hardcore kid at some point. And, like, it's almost like that's the sniff test for me for indie rock. It's like, oh, you weren't into punk and hardcore back in the day? Yeah, that's probably why I'm not feeling this record as much. With the exception of The National. The National, I think, are pretty awesome, and I don't think they were ever punk and hardcore kids in that band.
Yeah, but you don't wear those kinds of leather jackets if you've been into punk and hardcore. I don't think.
No. And also, like, you know, they were deadheads, legit deadheads. Not that you can't be both, as illustrated by Black Flag, even way back in the day. I think it's like, I just think it's because, like, all the interesting people that you meet either came out of hip hop, rap, or punk. And, like, you know, I'm sure I've met other people that are interesting, and I certainly love people that didn't come out of those things. But at the same time, like, not a lot of the pop culture I like was made by people that weren't out of one of those two things.
Well, do you have anything else that you need to say about Blink-182?
Like, I do really, like, we didn't even talk about Adam's song, which I think is like their masterpiece. You know, I think they could write a song, and, you know, they've certainly were at one point like a huge band in my life, and then for a short period of time a band I really didn't like, but also a band that's responsible for getting a lot of people I really do like the music of, or do like, into punk rock. So I can't take anything away from this band. You know, some of those lyrics definitely don't hold up in 2018 off those early records. You know,
Yeah.
some questionable calls early on, but you know, that's all. You know, we grew up with Blink-182. You know, we grew up. They were growing up with them. I always think it's funny. Like, what do you think it was like when they went to play shows, and it's like, oh man, like Rock from the Crypt, and, you know, or like Unbroken. Like, they were like walking with giants back then.
I think that was even my own experience growing up, was like going to see bands that were just really serious and then being a little shithead. And that's sort of why I gravitated toward Blink-182 and towards making the cool, smart people angry at me all the time, because I just wanted to giggle with my friends.
Yeah, I think that's like, you know, you find, like, and I think that's NoFX did that too, like a generation before. You know, it's like they were that band. I think I remember talking to, you know, your dream guest Simon Harvey, one of the first times I met him.
Who we should say for our listener, he runs the label Ugly Pop, who like
and also pick up the new reissues he just put out. He did the Modern Minds and he did, what else? Oh, the Fits as well just came out, and
it's genuinely a very cool label. But I think
and also this, like, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the coolness of the label, this is what I also respect about Hardcore from a Distance, is like the way it stays cool and vibrant is by these people hating people like me.
I don't think he hates people like you at all. Like, I think the thing about Simon is he was that professor, you know, like the hard, mean dick teacher that you have when you're younger, you know, but he's the one that teaches you the most. Like, I learned the most from him. And when it comes to music, like, that was where I learned about all this stuff, you know. And I think a lot of my foundation in music is owed to him. But at the same time, like, yeah, like, I was a different generation. So I remember him telling me the night after Propagandhi played with Left 4 Dead at the infamous London show, where Left 4 Dead went on stage and just, like, made fun of Propagandhi throughout their entire set. It was eventually released as a Left 4 Dead Chokehold split, but they edited out most of the banter in between. But they were, like, ripping into Propagandhi super hard. And then Propagandhi got up on stage and, like, made fun of Left 4 Dead and ripped into Left 4 Dead. And Shoulder also played the pre-Constantine's band. So, like, what a fucking show if you look back on it now.
That's unreal.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so I remember talking to Simon Harvey the next day, and he's like, yeah, we were all, like, making fun of fucking Propagandhi. Like, this song's about snowboarding and fascism. And, like, this song's about cheating. And, like, just heckling him the whole time. And he's like, oh, you said you had a band. What does your band sound like? I'm like, it sounds like Propagandhi. And he's just like, it just ends the conversation. I was just, like, so mad at that point. Like, dare you dismiss the greatest band of my generation. You know, I still stand by that. That is the greatest band, like, that got produced by my like, era of music that introduced me to this kind of music. I mean, you know, but, like, that's just, like, the natural order of things. You know?
Yeah, it's like gatekeepers, basically.
Yeah, and it's funny because we live in a world where you don't need those anymore, because now everything is at the touch of a button. Like, I could just click top 10 Japanese Burning Spirits style hardcore bands, or top 10 noise core Japanese bands, and like I could be provided with like an amazing list of records to check out, and most of them would be on a music streaming service that would be available at a touch of a button. So, but at other points, you kind of needed these people because the resources were precious. You know, like there were only so many copies of like the Gizem Detestation album, and like God forbid they fell into the hand of a poser who then dropped out, kept this information, and like a copy was gone forever from circulation, you know? So you almost needed keepers because the resources were so precious back then.
Right. Damn. Well, I don't know, Sam, you got anything else for Damian?
No, I've just been enjoying this ride, man, and thinking about how Damian likes all the right things, like Kyle Bishop and Grade, Propaganda. All the things that I defend on this podcast, you've shown up
are the things that Sam
given
really
your
are.
gravity to them, which I appreciate.
Well, I think those are. It's funny because those two bands that you're talking about, like, I think it's criminal how overlooked Propaganda was by the Canadian, music press back then. Like when we were growing up, like I just remember being, like, I'm like, how can they be writing about these bullshit bands that no one cares about? Meanwhile, one of the most important bands is happening right in front of our eyes, and like I still stand by it, like. There's more that I've gotten out of Propaganda lyrics than just about any lyrics by any band ever, and like those liner notes still hold up, and those reading lists are still important. I think most of the books that they recommend, and like it's amazing, like how like what a like utility knife that was for like a kid growing up, where you're like, I don't know if I like the way this world works, And like, here they were completely ignored, like not that they would want that attention, but I was just like, man, I can't believe they're not writing about these bands, or the fact that like, Career Suicide was touring Japan and not getting written up. It's now changed, of course, but I found that frustrating back then. So I'm glad, Sam, that you see the brilliance and importance of these bands too.
We can agree that everyone in this conversation right now is brilliant, and adept at recognizing importance, if not important themselves.
Well, I think
one of Sam sentence.
One of us in this conversation does not recognize the brilliance of these two artists that we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I don't know. I never got into Propaganda, but I also feel like growing up in
like
Vancouver.
Team Gob.
Yeah, because I was just gonna say, like, growing up in Vancouver, I feel like there were different bands that were worshipped than there were in Toronto. Like, even I'll show people bands that I love from Vancouver, and they're like, really? It's too yelpy, or like, I don't know. It was just a different place, maybe.
Yeah. It's funny because like Vancouver, I remember going out there, and I remember being like meeting kids that were into punk, and I'm like, oh, do you guys like Strain? And do you guys like this band and that band? And they'd be like, I haven't heard of them at all. Like, I just like DPS. And I was like, what? Like, and it was like this weird kind of, it was a scene that I never truly understood going there as a young person and visiting.
Well, I feel like, especially when I was like kind of at the tail end of me going to shows, was when like Amazing Core was happening, and like Go It Alone, Reserve 34, bands like that were like, that was like the shit that everyone was obsessed with.
That's when Vancouver found its hardcore finally. Amazing Core.
Exactly.
Like, there were so many bands from there that came out of that scene, like, population wise, like that was producing probably, an Amazing Core band for every 300 people.
It was very fertile.
It was very fertile. And like a lot of those bands had, I guess that was like the Pacific Northwest was the Amazing Core hub for a minute.
And as someone who was like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I liked it because there were so many octave chords, and it did remind me of pop punk. But people would always get mad when I would tell them that.
Yeah, no, and believe me, the roots of Amazing Core run deep in myself as well. Like, I definitely love a lot of the bands that were pre-Amazing Core, but I think that was also like when Amazing Core really started happening. That was like at the same time that I was like pretty defined in my aesthetic of what I was listening to, i.e. Just Poison Idea and H100s.
Right.
And Integrity. That, it's like, and Propaganda.
And Grade.
and great. Well, I mean, not as good as great.
Just start the
Kyle
whole
Bishop,
interview again.
That's my Simon Harvey, though. Kyle Bishop. I want him on the podcast so badly because I think, you know, as Sam knows, he did save a woman from a burning car.
He is a hero. A real, honest to God hero.
An honest to God hero. Like, and that's not like, it sounds like we're joking about this, but he did. You're the one who hit me to this whole thing.
Yeah, he like.
I'm gonna listen to Grade tomorrow. What album should I listen to?
Maybe Separate the Magnets. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say Separate the Magnets is the one. It's funny. I remember hearing that like Rise Against was like sound checking with a song off Separate the Magnets one time at a show in Toronto. You know, like that record is one of those records that, you know, I wouldn't go as far as say it had the same, you know, commercial success that, you know, the Refused did, but like I think that's the shape of punk to come for a certain sound of emo, screamo influenced hardcore.
Yeah, totally. Under the Radar is like my record, but I feel like Separate the Magnets is the cooler answer, so I would like maybe suggest you start there.
Yeah.
I think
say
Kyle still has dreads on Separate the Magnets, like at least in the liner notes, whereas by Under the Radar you're in full like pompadour, elaborate facial hair mode.
I think also, but I think Josiah, I think the one you're going to identify the most with, because I kind of think you do have like a deep silkscreen patch fans that had napkins for covers of their 7-inch.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like the Vancouver thing. So I would say that first record. What's that first one called?
And Such is Progress.
And Such is Progress. I think that's the one.
Yeah, you're right.
Title.
You're totally right.
That's a really good teen political poetry title too. Like reads Adbusters once.
One of the most incredible, impactful moments of stage banter I've ever seen was like Grade at that show. I'd seen Grade play with Propagandhi before, so it wasn't my first time seeing Grade, but it was like, I think the fact that all the DBS guys were like basically taking notes, watching them play. The second time I saw him at that Avail show, this is like one of the best punk days in my fucking life. I wake up in the morning, go to the studio, watch Five Knuckle Chuckle record their record. I don't know how, but it was like a dream for me to have that happen. Then I go up to the Rivoli and watch a Grade play with No Reason. My first time seeing No Reason from Buffalo, a super early Youth Crew revival band that is still sick. Still stand by that 7-inch. And then Grade played, and then Avail played. And then I went up and saw DBS play at the El Macombo at a punk fest in Doom play. What a day.
That doesn't even sound like a real day.
Yeah, no, it was like a crazy day. It's like, that's like my punk fantasy day. And it was like, that was all just one Saturday.
That should be a movie. That would be a good coming of age movie.
But you know what the crazy thing is? It was over by dinner time. Like all that shit happened before dinner time. I think I did something else that night. Like probably drank a Mickey of vodka in the park with some friends, which was also the activity of choice back then. But at that show, Kyle Bishop, I remember him going down. He was wearing like a sweater cardigan kind of thing, and he had his dreads back then. He gets down. He goes, "This song goes out to Mike Harris, bastard!" And they went into the song, and it was like, I was like, "Fuck." It was like, as a kid, I was like, that's fucking hard, dude. That was sick.
Also, for people who think that the podcast is too Canadian, of course, Mike Harris was the conservative premier of Ontario who enacted the Common Sense Revolution, which was just the slashing of social programs in the 90s. So if you didn't pick up that reference...
We all knew that.
Yeah, of course.
I think also he was like kind of like our first coming of populist politics to Ontario.
Absolutely. So
you mentioned Andy from DBS
very
earlier.
Much. Andy was at the show.
I feel like we all need to get Andy on our pods, because did you realize that he's like quite a successful painter now, and he paints these like ornate, like royal looking paintings, and Mindy Kaling is one of his biggest fans. He's like on the cover of all these art magazines now. Yeah,
it goes for a fortune of shit now. It's crazy. It's like,
so
when you
sick.
think about DBS and the impact of DBS, the impact of Andy, like here's this dude who, not only put out the first, Death from Above 1979 record, but like the first Hot Heat record, and like.
Actually, yeah, Andy was like a huge Vancouver person for me when I was a teen. I was like, whoa, this guy, yeah, like Ache Records was crazy. And then at the time it was Red Light Sing, but then also DBS. And then he was making like weird IDM music as Secret Mommy. And I was like, you can do literally everything you want with DIY. Like you can just do it.
It's so weird to think of DBS too, and where they sit. Like DBS, a bunch of little kids on tour with like Swingin' Utters and AFI at like 15, 16. It's like they would have an interesting story, like an interesting biopic about that band.
No kidding.
Probably met some weird people on the road there. I remember they played Toronto. They played Spiderland Acres. Oh, yeah, and Jesse talked about it on the podcast when he was on. And a naked guy just jumped out of nowhere and just landed on the front of their van.
And it was Mark Hoppus.
It's in the video. You can see it.
They killed him. Yo, what about Tom and that alien thing? You think that's like
This is. I feel like it's actually an unofficial segment when we have a guest. Is about towards the end, they're always like, "What's the deal with the aliens?" I mean, I think it's kind of legit. Like he has like real people working for him. They all quit NASA to go work for him.
Juju, you know what's like? I wish I had for Much Music. Like of all the stuff in that archive that I wish I had made copies of when I had that job. One of the things I most wish was that Angels and Airwaves interview that they did back then, where he was talking about how it was going to be the biggest band of all time, and this was like the most important band he's ever done, and like maybe the most important band ever done, and like comparing it to like U2 as if that was some sort of like
benchmark. Yeah.
And he was right.
And he was right.
He was
and now
right.
he's going to save us all with his alien startup.
It's a weird time. It's like a really weird time. Yeah, he might be our next president. I mean, in Canada.
Yeah. Okay, well,
that would be surreal.
And yeah, Damian, unless you have any other, probing alien queries or anything like that, we can probably let you go or continue talking about aliens and in wrestling and DBS.
No, I've run dry right now, but thank you for having me on this show,
dude. Thank you so much.
You can plug something also. You're allowed to do that if you want.
I guess I'm going to plug my podcast, which I've been skillfully plugging the whole show. Notice
Blink 155. Yeah.
Yes, I do a podcast where I interview people, and they pretty much go exactly like this too, just rambling conversations. But normally, I do less talking, so check that out. Turn It a Punk on your podcast apps of choice.